This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Shui Xian was stunned. Her disbelieving expression turned into shock and ecstasy. Her eyes were filled with excitement as she muttered to herself, if it's me, Wen Qianqian, this lotus throne is actually like me, Wen Qianqian. Her voice wasn't loud, but everyone present was an expert, so they all heard it clearly. However, most people did not understand what "so I've heard" meant. Only Guang Yuan and Zhao Wenxian's expressions changed drastically. Guang Yuan was also extremely shocked. He looked at the lotus seat in the sky with an indescribable, complicated gaze. He had always been guessing the origin of this item. He had long guessed in his heart, but he just didn't dare to confirm it. Now that he had heard water deity's words, he no longer had any doubts. Shui Xian said excitedly, First Island Master, this is what I've heard about the Feiyang Lotus Throne. Please return the Ocean Emperor's palace. Everyone's face darkened. This little girl was still sleepwalking. Guang Yuan's current actions clearly showed that he did not think much of the Sea Emperor's palace. Moreover, with such an important treasure and his own extraordinary strength, he could just find a random place to avoid being hunted down by the Sea Emperor's palace. However, everyone was also extremely shocked. So this magnificent Dharma Lotus platform came from the Ocean Emperor's palace. No wonder it had such heaven-defying power. Guang Yuan licked his dry lips, smiled, and said, Don't worry, Your Highness. I've heard that you've lost too much power, and now is the best time to recover. I'll send it back to the Sea Emperor's palace after it's fully recovered. Shui Xian heaved a sigh of relief and said, That's good. Then I'll have to trouble the First Island Master, finding this is what I've heard, I really can't even dream of it. Imperial Father will definitely be very happy. This is a peerless art. Guang Yuan laughed out loud, and as he looked at the lotus seat, his face was bright. It was said that in ancient times, the four seas were not united, and there were no royal clans. They all had their own formations and killed each other. At that time, tens of thousands of members of the sea tribe died every day. It was hard to count, and it was called the barbaric era. At that time, there was a peerless master who, with his power, subdued the four seas and 100 races. He came from all over the world and completely ended the barbaric era, starting the era of the Sea Emperor that had continued to this day. That expert was also the first-generation ancestor of the Bo family, reputed to be the only Lord Sea God in history. After the ocean goddess had conquered the four seas, she began to divide the four seas into different races. The current 5 grades of S, A, B, C, and D had been passed down from that time, and the royal families of the four seas were also the rulers appointed by the first generation of the ocean goddess, and no one dared to go against them. In order to get rid of the violent and ruthless aura that had been passed down from generation to generation in the sea tribe, the sea god would come to the current holy land of the four seas every 10 years to teach and educate the people. In the depths of the ocean forest, the holy land of the four seas, there was originally a pure white lotus flower with extremely strong spirituality. Every time the sea god opened a path for him to teach, it would listen from a distance. Finally, year after year, there came a day when the sea god imparted his Tao. As this lotus listened, it suddenly attained Tao, and its pure white lotus body turned into a brilliant golden light. This not only shocked many members of the sea race, but also triggered lightning in the world. A world-destroying Zifu divine lightning broke through the void and struck toward the golden lotus. At that time, everyone was shocked by the purple thunder. Under the might of heaven and earth, all living things seemed so small and could only be blown away by the rain and wind. The golden lotus began to shine with golden light. It wanted to resist the divine lightning of destruction, but all of its defenses were destroyed with a single strike. In its despair, the sea goddess made her move. Everyone knew that the sea god was powerful, but they didn't know just how powerful he was. However, he managed to save the golden lotus with a single move. However, the golden lotus was already on the verge of death after being struck by the Zifu apocalyptic godly lightning. It was on the verge of dying from the dissipation of its spiritual energy. After a moment's thought, the sea goddess refined the golden lotus into a lotus platform of Feiyang in front of all the strong people. Because the golden lotus had attained Tao when it was listening to teachings, it was named So I Heard. From then on, Rush Herd had become the emperor of the ocean emperors. However, this thing had been lost for many years, and even the current Poseidon had never seen it before. He only knew about it from some records. One could only imagine how excited Shui Xian was when she first saw it. However, this silly girl still happily waited for Guangyuan to repair it and then send it back to the Sea Emperor's palace. Yunxiao could not help but smile wryly at her innocent look, but he was not in the mood to expose her at the moment. Even if he pulled her into the battle, she would not be of any help. In the distance, Dark North Kongtian was also exhausted after performing the 3 moves from beyond the sky. He stood in the air, gasping for breath. The guest and minister were blasted into the ground and disappeared without a trace. But Yunxiao knew that the fleshly bodies of the guests and ministers were incalculable, and even if they were injured, they could not have died just like that. They had most likely found a place to hide. Li Yunxiao, how dare you be distracted? Ruo Xiang's expression turned cold, and anger appeared on his face as if he had suffered a great humiliation. The dragon's spine in his hand roared, and the vertebrae let out crackling sounds as white bone shadows filled the air. Yunxiao's figure was constantly smashed into pieces by the dragonair, but all of them were just afterimages. His voice came from all directions as he laughed. I'm sorry, the shaking just now was too big and scary. Now that you've regained your senses, I can send you on your way. Ruo Xiang's face darkened, and he said, I'll make you pay for disrespecting me. He pulled back his right hand, and the dragon spine flew back and turned into a dragon head on his left shoulder. His right hand grabbed in the air, and a beam of light condensed in his palm, turning into a 3-pointed, double-edged spear. Clang! As soon as the spear appeared, it immediately let out a powerful sound. 9 copper rings hung on each of the 2 blades, and as Yun Xiang's origin power poured into the spear, waves of ferocious beast roars came from it. Yunxiao's pupils constricted as he stared at the spear with a solemn look. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell that the spear was extremely extraordinary. However, he had fought with Ruo Xiang many times, but he had never seen this profound-level weapon before. He had never seen Ruo Xiang use it even at the moment of life and death, so Yunxiao could not help but be suspicious. Ruo Xiang held the 3-pointed, double-edged spear in front of him. A golden light appeared on the spear and formed an ancient Manhwa character in the air. Manhwa ancient weapon. Yunxiao's face flickered. It's a Manhwa ancient weapon. The golden Manhwa ancient character changed in the air and turned into a halo. Roars came from within, and even the shadow of a fierce beast appeared in the air and circled around the halo. A sneer appeared on Ruo Xiang's face as he said softly, 6th break, heaven warping. The long spear burst out with a golden light as if it was a scorching sun in his hand. He took a step in the air and used spatial bending as he slashed down. Yunxiao's face darkened as he performed a sword incantation with his left hand and touched the frosty blade of the cold sword. A crisp sword sound rang out, and an exquisite sword talisman shot out. The ice sword pierced into the sword talisman, and a blue array appeared under his feet. A surge of power slowly rose from the array and suddenly poured into the cold sword frost, sweeping across the air. Ruo Xiang closed in, raised his battle spear with one hand, and slashed down. Bang! The 3-pointed and 2-edged spear's roaring power directly broke through the defense of the array and slashed at the sword. Bang! The halo on the spear exploded at that moment, and an indescribable force roared out and pounced at Yunxiao. Your sister. Yunxiao was taken aback. He knew that this was the power of laws derived from the ancient character of Manhwa, and that Ruo Xiang could already control it at will. He didn't have time to think. All of his strength was focused on the ice sword. At this moment, he was being suppressed by the opponent's 3-pointed, double-edged spear. He was completely unable to escape. The power of the rule force had already come down from the sky. At this critical moment, the immemorial heaven's eye in the heart of his brows suddenly opened, and he actually punched. It was the fist of the calabash little King Kong. A cold white flame appeared on the tip of the fist, dancing non-stop. Boom. Under the pressure of the fist, the rule force was directly blocked. The dancing white flame crashed into the explosion of light, and the golden light on the swords lost its color in an instant, turning gray. What? Xiang was shocked. He, who originally had the upper hand, suddenly felt a terrifying aura coming at him. The insufferably arrogant battle spear seemed to be suppressed at this moment, as if it was about to be extinguished in an instant. He was horrified. This spear was one of the deals he had made with Guang Yuan. He had planned to catch Yunxiao off guard with it, but he did not expect it to be taken down just as he had gained the upper hand. A sneer appeared at the corner of Yunxiao's mouth as he said coldly, "Competing with me on profound-level weapons? Your head must be stuck between the door." 2 heads and 4 arms stretched out from behind him. One of the arms grabbed a hammer and smashed it toward his head. Xiang was taken aback. A suction force suddenly swirled around Yunxiao's sword, suppressing him and making him unable to withdraw, while the hammer smashed down with the force of 10,000 thunderbolts. At this critical moment, the spine of the dragon on his body loosened, and the dragon head on his left shoulder suddenly opened its mouth and bit the hammer. Boom. The hammer struck the dragon's spine, and lightning shot out in all directions. The impact made the white bone struggle in the air, and the dragon's head trembled non-stop. With this shock, Xiang also pulled out his battle spear and flew backward. The white spinal bone immediately flew back and coiled around his body again. Xiang looked at the dragon head with a pained expression. Yunxiao's pupils constricted. The spine of the dragon seemed to be different from before. He couldn't tell exactly what was wrong. If it was a dead object that could turn into the Luo Ho battle spear before, now that it had the dragon head, it had a hint of intelligence. Moreover, the dragon head just opened its mouth and looked like it was going to eat someone. He could not help but turn his head and glance at Guang Yuan in the distance. Guang Yuan was currently strolling leisurely under the siege of the crowd, easily dealing with them. From time to time, he would pay attention to the fight between the two of them, and from time to time, he would pull out his dragon head to swallow a few people, eating with great relish. Suddenly, the sound of a conch rang out, and the sky rippled like water. An extremely strong power of sound waves came down from the sky, enveloping Guang Yuan's entire body. As the space fluctuated, a grayish-white sea tribe member appeared at the source of the sound wave. He was holding a 9-colored sky conch and blowing into it. Guang Yuan's heart jolted, and he looked around. His attention had been on Xiang and Yunxiao the whole time. In the distance, 9 Heavens and Coldfeather were fighting hard, but Zhao Wenjuan was nowhere to be seen. Could it be that Zhao Wenjuan is dead? A cold killing intent burst out of Guang Yuan's eyes. Zhao Wenjuan was a 9th-tier alchemist and was extremely important to him, whether for using or consuming. Damn it! Where is the 5th island master? He roared loudly and raised his right hand. He clenched his 5 fingers, gathered energy, and threw a punch into the air. Boom! A green fist radiance streaked across the sky and dispersed the conch sound. The fist radiance continued to attack the sea tribe member. The man frowned and put the conch down. His whole body turned illusionary and disappeared into the air. Damn it! A cold glint flashed in Guang Yuan's eyes as he said coldly, "You think you won't die if you hide?" His body disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, he appeared beside the Feiyang lotus platform. His hands formed a seal. A ray of light shot down from the lotus platform and enveloped him. Guang Yuan's eyes suddenly became golden and brilliant as he looked down at the sky. Over there. His pupils contracted, and he threw a punch in the air. Bang. Everything in sight was blasted apart by the fist force. Pfft. A figure was shaken out of the space, spat out a mouthful of blood, and hurriedly changed form in the air. Landing on the ground in a few flashes, the figure fled into the distance. Humph. The entire island is formed by my visualization. Where can you escape to? A hint of pity and ridicule flashed in Guang Yuan's eyes. He was just about to give chase when his body suddenly froze. His pupils widened as he looked toward the distant Ruoxiang, revealing a grave and excited expression. In the distance, Ruoxiang's body started to change. His spine fused into his body, and he transformed into a dragon in the air. The dragon head on his spine directly appeared in front of his chest, as if it had come to life. Its eyes bulged and shot out rays of cold light. Golden scales appeared on his body, and a pair of horns protruded from his forehead. His spiritual aura was as threatening as jade. Every change in his body caused a loud boom, as if he was connected to a distant time and space. His hands turned into dragon claws, and he held the three-pointed, double-edged spear in one hand. His aura had already risen to its peak, directly causing a strange phenomenon in the sky. A strange aura rippled in the sky. This is... Everyone's heart trembled violently, and they unconsciously stopped fighting and looked up at the sky in horror. This aura seemed to have come from ancient times. It made people shiver, and fear rose in their hearts. Especially those oceanic species experts, their legs were all soft, practically about to kneel in the air. Yunxiao's face also turned solemn. Under the dragon's might, even he felt pressure in his heart and could not breathe. In the distance, the movements of 9 Heavens and Cold Feather, as well as Feiyang and the rest, also stopped, all looking over in shock. Under the mighty dragon's might, the people of the Sea tribe were the most affected. Even Shui Xian's expression changed slightly, revealing a look of shock. Dragon transformation, this is the true dragon transformation. Guang Yuan suddenly laughed loudly, his eyes shining with an abnormally excited light as he said loudly, "Genius of the North Sea, let me see your endless potential." There was a calm expression on Ruoxiang's face, which was the complete opposite of the violent and excited look from before. His eyes were like water, shining on all living things without leaving a trace. "A part of the true dragon's form has really appeared," Yunxiao said seriously. "Is this the trump card that gave you the courage to fight me?" Ruoxiang did not answer. He raised his head and looked at the endless sky and the endless sea in the distance. "I was born in a C-class sea clan in the North Sea." He suddenly said something strange, and everyone was stunned. Guang Yuan also furrowed his brows, but he still did not make a sound, and quietly continued to listen. "My birth was a catastrophe for my race, because my father was the ruler of the North Sea, and my mother was only the daughter of a C-class sea clan leader. Thus, my mother's family was reduced to dust in the ocean with my birth." A ripple finally appeared in Ruoxiang's watery eyes, like a small stone being thrown into an ancient well. "That includes my mother." Everyone's heart jolted, and they revealed different expressions. "I was 5 years old that year, and I'll always remember the scene of their tragic deaths," Ruoxiang said calmly. "Then I was brought to the palace of North Sea and forced to acknowledge a man I've never met as my father. That day, I was thrown into the abyss of the North Sea." "Ah!" Shui Xian couldn't help but exclaim in shock. She covered her mouth with her little hand and revealed a look of shock. Meanwhile, Guang Yuan's eyes flickered with a brilliant light, but his expression remained the same. Among the people present, only the two of them knew what the abyss of the North Sea was. It was the cruelest place of trial in the North Sea. It led directly to another space. Even an adult Sea tribe member would find it difficult to come back alive from there. "Because that man said that the blood in my body has been contaminated, and I'm not worthy of being his son unless I can return from the abyss of the North Sea." Ruoxiang raised his head, his eyes flashing with reminiscence as he continued, "I was only 5 years old back then, and my strength hadn't reached the 8 Desolates realm yet. Many of the other members of the royal family were already at the peak of the 8 Desolates realm. The marine race was born with a powerful bloodline, and some excellent S-class races were even born as 9 Heavens realm experts." He closed his eyes slightly, and a look of loneliness and pain flashed across his face. It was as if there was only pain left when he recalled the events in the abyss of the North Sea. "It took me 3 years to break through to the Marshal Supreme of the 8 Desolates realm. This was already the worst talent among the crown princes of the North Sea at that time. But..." The aura on Ruoxiang's body underwent a violent change, and his inner emotions seemed to be affected. His sharp eyes suddenly opened, and he said in a cold voice, "But I must become the strongest." I must return from the abyss of the North Sea and kill them all. Humph. Shui Xian cried out in shock again. Under the ferocious expression on Yunxiao's face, she suddenly felt a little scared. The rest of the people listened quietly. There was not much change in their hearts. This was because the survival of the sea race was extremely cruel. The level of the bloodline almost determined the fate of one's life. Yunxiao's eyes narrowed slightly as he said calmly, "Then you killed them all?" Ruo Xiang smiled, and a determined smile appeared on his face as he said, "It took me 5 years to finally escape from the infernal realm. Although I'm still in the 8 Desolates realm, no one in my generation is my match. I've killed 22 of my father's 32 sons." A chill ran down everyone's spine. Although there was no family love in the imperial family, this brat was too ruthless. This showed how much of a psychological impact he had suffered back then to have such a vicious heart at such a young age. Guang Yuan's face was dark, and his eyes were also slightly narrowed, as if he was sensing the kind of mood that Ruo Xiang was feeling. He had also been injured by his own brothers and almost died from the pursuit. "Those who cursed at me and my mother, I'll return them all with my fists. Once, 7th brother called me a bastard to my face, so I blew up his head on the spot and hung his body in front of the palace gate for 3 months. No one dared to collect his body." A cruel smile appeared on Ruo Xiang's face as he said, "After killing father's 22 sons, he also killed their mother's line. I also bit off the flesh of the person who killed my mother and killed him." The cold gleam in his eyes grew colder and colder as he stared at Yunxiao and said, "The remaining 10 didn't die not because they didn't curse me, but because I couldn't beat them back then. After I kill you, I'll go back to the North Sea and kill them all." Humph. Everyone's face was filled with black lines. "Many people tried to kill me in secret, but I dodged them all. I even returned the favor with 10 times the amount of force. From then on, my talent and fierce reputation spread throughout the entire North Sea. Everyone trembled in fear when they heard my name. Actually, my talent is really trash, but I have a heart that must win. No matter how strong the other party is, I must defeat him, I must. This is my heart of martial arts, Ruo Xiang of the North Sea." An unusually determined power suddenly burst out from his eyes as he stared at the boundless ocean. It was as if he was traversing endless space and staring at the end of martial arts. "In order to defeat the 10 brothers, in order to defeat the hero in my heart, the king of the North Sea, my father, I have stepped into the heavenly martial continent to pursue a higher martial Tao. Just when I was full of confidence, thinking that I could sweep across the world, cross the 4 seas, and defeat all the young generation, you showed up, Li Yunxiao." Ruo Xiang's eyes contained an extremely complicated expression, but it was even more ice-cold and murderous. He said ferociously, "You're the one who shattered my dream. No one has ever been like you, standing in front of me like a tall wall. No matter how hard I try to grow, I can't get over it. Every time I felt that it was enough to kill you, I found that you had already become stronger. The gap between us not only did not shrink, but it was getting bigger and bigger. Li Yunxiao, should I be grateful to you or hate you?" Ruo Xiang asked a question that made him feel conflicted. He laughed and said, "It's also because of you that I've been able to reach where I am now and possess the power of the dragon. I should be thanking you. Ever since the defeat at the Red Moon City, there has never been a moment like this, where I feel so close to you. Today, I'll use your bones to build a flight of stairs under my feet. Let me take another step towards the end of the martial Tao." Ruo Xiang's 5 fingers clenched, and a vast power burst out from his arm. A heaven-shaking dragon's roar soared into the sky.